Just when you think it's over. In a frozen Wisconsin prison, thick concrete walls, steel bars, and behind one of those bars sits a man who destroyed everything he ever had. Chris Watts. You know the name. You remember the headlines. But do you know what happens to him every single day now? Do you know what his life looks like in 2025, 7 years after everything fell apart? Do you know who comes see him often? Right now, as you watch this, he's sitting in a tiny cell, 6 feet by 9 feet. That's smaller than your bathroom. And he's been there for over 2,000 days. New information just came out. Letters he wrote. Stories from people who've seen him. Details about his daily routine that will shock you. Some say he's changed, others say it's all an act. But here's what nobody's talking about. What really happens when the lights go out? Why do men in suits come to visit him? What goes through his mind during those long, endless nights? As an investigative reporter and a parent myself, this was one of the hardest and touching pieces of case I've ever had to research. Please subscribe. It encourages me to keep bringing you more details about this case. Let's go back to where this prison story actually begins. November 2018. The courtroom was packed. Families crying, cameras flashing, and Chris Watts standing there, hearing his sentence. 5 life sentences. Plus 48 years. Plus 36 years. No chance of parole, ever. But here's something most people don't know. He didn't stay in Colorado. Why? Because keeping him there was too dangerous. Think about it. Everyone in Colorado knew his face, knew what he did, knew every detail. Prison has its own rules, its own justice system, and inmates don't treat everyone the same. Some crimes, they get you put at the very bottom. And what he did? That puts you at the lowest level possible. So the state of Colorado made a decision. Ship him out, get him far away. Somewhere cold, somewhere isolated, somewhere he could be kept safe from other inmates who might want to hurt him. December 3, 2018. That's when Chris Watts arrived at Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. Do you know where that is? It's a small town, population around 11,000 people, middle of nowhere. Freezing cold winters, the kind of place where snow piles up 6 feet high and doesn't melt for months. The prison itself? It's huge. Over 900 inmates locked inside. Maximum security. This isn't some low-level facility. This is where Wisconsin keeps its most serious cases. And here's something creepy. Before it was a prison, parts of that building were used as a hospital, a place for people with severe mental problems. Can you imagine? Walking those same halls where people once screamed and suffered. When Chris Watts walked through those gates, everything changed for him. No more Colorado. No more anything familiar. Just cold Wisconsin winters and a cell waiting for him. From day one, they put him in protective custody. You know what that means? It means he can't mix with regular inmates, can't eat in the cafeteria with everyone else, can't go to the yard whenever he wants. He's separated, isolated, protected. Why? Because prison has a code, unwritten rules that everyone follows, and people who hurt children or families, they're marked, they're targets. Other inmates see them as the worst of the worst. So his protection became his prison within a prison. They gave him a job right away. Custodian. Sounds simple, right? But picture this. You're mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, cleaning up after hundreds of other inmates. And you're making 12 cents an hour, not $12. 12 cents. Do the math with me. If he works 8 hours, that's 96 cents, not even $1, for a full day of work. But here's the thing. In prison, that money matters. It buys stamps, snacks from the commissary, small things that make life slightly more bearable. So he takes the job, he mops, he cleans, he keeps his head down, and every single day looks exactly the same. As an investigative reporter and a parent myself, this was one of the hardest and touching pieces of case I've ever had to research. Please subscribe. It encourages me to keep bringing you more details about this case. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to know your life will never change? That every tomorrow will look just like today? That's his reality now. No vacation, no days off, no hoping for something better. Just walls, and more walls, and the same routine. Forever. Let me walk you through a typical day, because understanding his routine helps you understand just how crushing this existence really is. 5 in the morning. Lights buzz on, harsh fluorescent lights that hurt your eyes. No gentle wake-up, no snooze button, just sudden brightness and the sound of metal doors clanging somewhere down the hall. Breakfast comes through a slot in his door, a small opening, just big enough to slide a tray through. He doesn't eat with anyone, doesn't see anyone, just takes his tray and eats alone in his cell. What's for breakfast? Usually something basic. Oatmeal maybe, a piece of fruit if he's lucky. Toast. Coffee that tastes like dirty water, the kind of meal you wouldn't feed your dog. But in prison, that's what you get. After breakfast, the tray goes back through the slot. And then what? Nothing. He sits there, in his cell, 6 feet by 9 feet. One small bed, a metal toilet, a tiny sink, maybe a few books, some letters, his Bible. And that's it. That's his entire world, 23 hours a day in that space. Can you imagine it? Look around your room right now. Now imagine never leaving it. Not for work, not for food, not to see friends, just you and 4 walls for 23 hours straight. 1 hour. That's all he gets outside his cell. 1 single hour. And it's not like he can do whatever he wants. That hour is supervised, monitored, controlled. Sometimes it's shower time. Guards escort him down the hall. Other inmates watch. Everyone knows who he is. Their eyes follow him. Some whisper. Some just stare with looks that say everything. The shower is quick, maybe 10 minutes if he's lucky, rushing to wash up while guards wait outside. No privacy, no relaxation. Just get clean and get back to your cell. Other times that hour is for making phone calls. But here's the catch, every call is monitored, recorded, limited to certain people on an approved list, and those calls cost money. Remember, he's making 12 cents an hour, so every minute on the phone is precious. Who does he call? That's something people wonder about, his family. Some of them still talk to him, others cut him off completely. Would you take a call from someone who did what he did? Even if they were family? Some days his 1 hour is yard time, but it's not like he can just run around playing basketball. He's still in protective custody. So it's a small area, separated from other inmates. Maybe he walks in circles, does a few push-ups, breathes fresh air that feels like freedom even though he's still surrounded by fences and guards. And then, back to the cell. 23 more hours to go. Think about what you did yesterday, all the places you went, people you saw, things you did. Now imagine if all of that was taken away, if your entire existence was one small room, day after day, year after year. How long do you think you could handle it? A week? A month? A year? He's been doing this for over 7 years now. The Bureau of Prisons keeps records, and according to those records, Chris Watts has stayed out of major trouble. No big fights, no serious rule violations, just 2 minor conduct reports in all these years. What were those reports for? Small things, breaking minor rules, nothing violent, nothing that got him thrown in solitary confinement, just little infractions that happen when you're living under a microscope. But don't let that fool you. Just because there are no official reports doesn't mean things are easy. Inmates who've been inside Dodge talk about the tension, the way certain people are treated, the unspoken threats. One former inmate said something chilling. He said the nights are the worst, because that's when you really feel how alone you are, when the prison gets quiet, when most people are sleeping. That's when your thoughts become loudest. Can you imagine lying in that small bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing you'll never leave, knowing everyone you love is living their lives without you, knowing you destroyed everything? Some nights, guards walking by report hearing things from his cell, crying. Quiet sobs that echo down the empty hallway, a grown man breaking down when he thinks nobody's listening. Is it real remorse or just self-pity? That's what everyone wonders, because crying alone in your cell doesn't undo anything. It doesn't bring anyone back, it doesn't fix what's broken. But it does show something, that the weight of what he did follows him everywhere, even into his dreams, maybe especially into his dreams. As an investigative reporter and a parent myself, this was one of the hardest and touching pieces of case I've ever had to research. Please subscribe. It encourages me to keep bringing you more details about this case. Now here's where things get really interesting, because even though Chris Watts is locked away from the world, he's not completely cut off. There's one connection he still has. One way he reaches out beyond those walls. Letters. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands by now. He writes constantly. To family. To pen pals. To people he's never even met, who just started writing to him after seeing the case on the news. Why do people write to prisoners? That's a question a lot of folks ask. Some do it out of curiosity, some think they can help somehow, and some, they're just drawn to famous cases. The more shocking the crime, the more letters the person gets. Chris Watts buys stamps by the sheet. He spends his 12 cents an hour on envelopes and paper, and he writes back to almost everyone who writes to him. Prison mail is monitored. Guards read it, looking for anything against the rules, codes, plans, threats, anything that could cause problems. But here's the thing about monitoring. It's not perfect. Things slip through. In 2025, some of his letters leaked online, not officially. Someone on the outside who'd been writing to him decided to share what he'd been saying. And when people read those letters, it caused a firestorm. What did he write about? His daily routine, his feelings, his faith, and something else. Something that made a lot of people angry. Blame. He wrote about regret, said he wishes he could take everything back, said he thinks about what he did every single day. But mixed in with that regret was something else. Finger-pointing. He never uses names in the letters. He's too smart for that. Guards would catch it immediately. But he uses phrases, hints, references that people on the outside would understand. The situation I was in. The person who changed everything. The temptation I couldn't resist. Reading between the lines, it's clear who he's talking about. The affair, the co-worker, the relationship that started everything tumbling down. And in these letters, he compared it to old stories, biblical stories. He used words like led astray and tempted beyond my strength, making it sound like he was a victim of circumstances instead of someone who made choices. Do you see what he's doing there? He's not taking full responsibility. He's spreading it around, sharing the blame, making it seem like other forces pushed him into what happened. That made people furious, because at the end of the day, nobody forced him to do what he did. Nobody held a weapon to his head and made him make those choices. He did that, all on his own. But in his mind, sitting in that cell, day after day, maybe that's how he copes. By telling himself a different story. By convincing himself that things just spiraled out of control and he was caught up in it. The letters also reveal something else. He's got supporters, people on the outside who believe he deserves forgiveness, who think he's truly changed, who send him encouraging messages and tell him they're praying for him. How does that make you feel? Knowing there are people who look at what he did and still find room for compassion, is that admirable or disturbing? Some of these pen pals are women. That's something that happens a lot with high-profile cases. Women who become fascinated with the person behind the crime, who convince themselves they see something others don't, that maybe they can be the one who saves him or understands him. He responds to these letters carefully, never romantic, never crossing lines that would get him in trouble, but friendly enough to keep the connection going, because those letters, they're his lifeline, his only window to the outside world. In one leaked letter from early 2025, he wrote about feeling heard for the first time in years, about how writing helps him process everything, about how some days the only thing that keeps him going is knowing someone out there is reading his words. Is that manipulation or genuine human need? That's the question nobody can really answer, because from inside a prison cell, every word someone writes is calculated, even if they don't realize it. Every sentence is crafted to create a certain image, and the image Chris Watts wants to create is clear, reformed, regretful, religious, redeemed. But letters on paper are easy. Real change? That's something different entirely. Let's talk about something that comes up a lot in his letters and in reports from people who know him inside. His faith. According to multiple sources, Chris Watts has become deeply religious since being locked up. He attends Bible study twice a week, reads scripture every day, quotes verses in his letters, talks about being saved and forgiven. The prison has a chaplain who runs these Bible studies, small groups, usually 5 or 6 inmates at a time. They sit in a room together, still supervised, of course, and talk about passages from the Bible, about redemption, about mercy, about second chances. And Chris Watts never misses it. Rain, snow, or shine, he's there, Bible in hand, taking notes, asking questions, participating in discussions. One person who attended these sessions said he seems genuine, that he's not just going through the motions, that he really engages with the material, wrestles with difficult questions, tries to understand what it all means for someone in his situation. His favorite verse, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17, "Therefore if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new." He quotes that one a lot. In letters, in conversations. It's become like his personal motto, the idea that he's a new creation now, that the old version of him is gone, that God has made him into something different. But here's the hard question. Can faith really change someone who did what he did? Is it possible for someone to be that bad and then become genuinely good? Or is it just a coping mechanism, a way to live with yourself when living with yourself seems impossible? Religious people will tell you yes, that redemption is always possible, that God's mercy is infinite, that no sin is too great to be forgiven. Others will tell you no way, that some things are unforgivable, that talking about being saved doesn't mean anything when your actions destroyed innocent lives, that faith is easy to claim but hard to prove. The chaplain at Dodge reportedly said that many inmates turn to religion in prison, when everything else is stripped away. When you have nothing but time to think about your life and your choices, that's when people start looking for meaning, for hope, for forgiveness. And Chris Watts? He's all in. He's read the entire Bible cover to cover, not once but multiple times. He can quote passages from memory. He talks about feeling God's presence in his cell during difficult moments. In one letter, he described praying late at night and feeling what he called peace washing over him. Here's what makes this complicated. Faith is personal. It happens inside someone's heart and mind where nobody else can see. So how do you judge if it's real? You can't take a test for genuine belief. You can't measure true repentance on a scale. All we can do is look at behavior. And by all accounts, his behavior has been stable. No violence, follows the rules, respectful to guards, participates in programs, helps other inmates when he can. But then again, isn't that just survival? In prison, you follow the rules because breaking them makes your life worse. You're respectful to guards because they control everything about your day. You participate in programs because it breaks up the monotony. Maybe his faith is real. Maybe it's performance. Maybe it's both. Maybe he's convinced himself it's real because that's easier than facing the alternative. One thing multiple sources agree on. He cries during Bible study sometimes, reading certain passages that hit too close to home, stories about betrayal, about loss, about consequences. His voice cracks. Tears roll down his face, and everyone in the room sees it. Are those tears for what he did, or for what he lost? That's the million-dollar question, because guilt and self-pity can look pretty similar from the outside. There's a saying that prison is full of people who found God. Judges hear it all the time. Someone commits a terrible crime, gets caught, goes to jail, and suddenly they're a changed person who loves Jesus and will never do anything wrong again. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's strategy for parole hearings. But Chris Watts will never have a parole hearing. He'll never get out. So what does he gain from pretending? Maybe that's actually evidence that it's real. He has no reason to fake it, no benefit to performing for guards or chaplains. He's not trying to impress a parole board. He's just trying to survive each day. And if believing in something bigger than himself helps him do that, then maybe his faith serves a purpose, even if we can't judge whether it's genuine. Now, we need to talk about the most controversial part of his prison life, the part that makes people angriest. The way he talks about responsibility. Remember those leaked letters we mentioned? Well, they contained something that shocked a lot of people. Mixed in with his talk about regret and faith and being a changed person, there was blame shifting. He never says, "This is all her fault." He's too careful for that. But he implies it, over and over, in different ways. He talks about being in a relationship that clouded his judgment, about being influenced by someone with different values, about falling into temptation that was placed in front of him. Anyone following the case knows what he means. The affair, the relationship with his co-worker that started while he was still married, the person he was with when everything fell apart, and the way he writes about it. It's like he's the victim, like things just happened to him instead of being things he chose to do. One letter from 2024 compared his situation to ancient stories where men were led astray by seductive women. He literally used religious texts to justify blaming someone else for his own actions. That made people furious, absolutely furious, because whatever else happened, whatever relationship issues existed, whatever mistakes were made by anyone else, at the end of the day, he's the one who made the final terrible choices. Nobody forced him. Nobody threatened him. Nobody made him do what he did. That was all him. But in his mind, sitting in that cell year after year, he's constructed a narrative, a story that lets him live with himself. And in that story, he's not completely a monster. He's a man who made mistakes, who was in over his head, who got caught up in circumstances beyond his control. Do you think that's how he really sees it? Or do you think deep down he knows the truth but can't face it?